I'm Kathryn Briggs of Resistance Comic, and you're listening to the True North Country Comics podcast.
Welcome to a special edition of the True North Country Comics podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book creators and supporters. It's May 19th, 2021. I'm John Swinimer. If you want to drop me a line, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. These podcasts are published to celebrate the exhibitors of this year's virtual edition of the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. TCAF is an annual event gathering comic book creators from around the world to promote broad and diverse voices towards a betterment of the medium of comics through panels, keynote exclusives, and just basically enjoying the fun of comics. On this episode, I chat with Kathryn Briggs about Resistance and more at TCAF 2021. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. It's also available on the True North Country Comics channel on YouTube. I invite you to like and subscribe. Based in Pennsylvania, Kathryn is an award-winning graphic novelist and arts educator. Her comics are a blend of mythology, witchcraft, and the terrifying process of self-discovery. Forthcoming projects from Kathryn include the first comic adaptation of a Val McDermid's work, Resistance, slated for release by Profile Books, and the new Chapter Tarot, a wholly original tarot deck illustrated by her, slated to be released spring by Liminal 11. And so, without further ado, here's my chat with Kathryn Briggs about Resistance and more at TCAF 2021. So, Kathryn Briggs, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Thank you so much for having me.
I appreciate your time. What I normally do to start off the interview is ask the creator about their first comic book. So I'm wondering if you remember, what was the first comic book that you read?
I remember vividly because I was at summer camp. I was a very angsty preteen, just about to be even angstier, and someone at summer camp had brought along a copy of Sandman.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I'm also betraying my age, but yes, that was my first comic. Right off the bat was some Sandman.
What was it, a trade paperback or one particular issue, or?
It was a trade paperback.
Cool. Yeah, lots of good stuff there, that's for sure. I mean, that's the thing about Sandman. It covers so many different genres and tastes of art and that sort of thing. So it's a little bit of everything.
Yes, exactly. And it was hitting me right in the mythology nerd. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. So Neil Gaiman is definitely a great influence, but I'm wondering, who influences your work today?
Well, Dave McKean, I would still say, is a great influence, harkening back to Sandman and those covers. My next greatest influence was David Mack, Kabuki. I think you'll probably be able to see that in my work with a lot of collage and a lot of watercolor work. So those are the main ones. And then more recent ones are Emma Rios. Our work doesn't look similar at all, but I just absolutely love what she does.
Cool. Good. So we're here talking in the context of the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. So with that in mind, I'm wondering if you have any favorite convention or festival moments that you like to share.
Sure. Well, I'd say, as we were talking a bit earlier, I spent a lot of time in the UK. So my favorite con would be Thought Bubble. If you ever make it over there, that's amazing. And it's hard to pinpoint a festival moment, but the mid-con party at Thought Bubble is one to remember that nobody ever does because you have such a good time.
That's great. That's what you want to have at a enjoyable time, great friends, great memories. That's good stuff. Super. So what we want to do here is talk about the books or book that you're exhibiting at TCAF. I wonder if you could talk a bit about it and maybe the origins of it as well.
Sure. So I'm exhibiting a couple books at TCAF. I've got a collection of my short comics. I've called Magpie. I've got a sort of sweeping original graphic novel called Triskelion. And my most recent works are an original tarot deck called The New Chapter Tarot that I'm very, very proud of. And a book called Resistance, which is written by Val McDermid. And this is her first graphic novel. She is a well-known crime writer. Yeah. So that one is about a pandemic that she wrote in 2017. So as I was working on it, I think I turned it in February 2020. So I finished all of the artwork just as COVID was kicking off. So it was a very eerie experience.
I bet.
Yeah. Sort of being working on this graphic novel, and I guess spoiler alert, it does not go very well for the world at large. And oh wait, here we go, a real life pandemic. Let's hope it works out better.
Right. How did you meet up? Was it because you said it was a book that was previously done, and then you turned it into a graphic novel?
Yeah, well, Resistance was actually a radio play produced for the BBC. Yeah. So Val McDermott lives in Scotland. I had previously been living in Scotland, and this was her first foray into comics. So I think she was sort of sneaking around, searching around Scotland's indie comic scene, which is amazing, full of really great creators. And somehow she landed on me. I was like, yes, please, I will do your comic for you.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Good stuff. Well, want to switch gears slightly, and you touched on it before, but I want to talk about the tools that you use to create your art. I wonder if you could walk me through how you do it, if there is a process.
Yeah, well, I like to say that I use analog art because, I don't know, I hate the term traditional because that implies that digital art is somehow less than, I feel. Okay. So I don't do anything digital besides lettering. I use watercolors and I use collage elements. I'm a classically trained oil painter, so I have lots of lovely life drawing classes under my belt. But yeah, so my process is it's very much connected to my fine art background. I work one page at a time. I don't, I know some artists like to do all of the thumbnails and then all of the pencils and then all of the inks for an issue or a comic. But I do one page at a time from start to finish, almost like it were a painting.
Do you, I know, as you mentioned, like some people do thumbnails, that sort of thing first.
Yeah.
I presume that you throw that right out the window.
No, I do that. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I do that. I do a really, really rough thumbnail sketch that nobody would understand except for me. And then I get into it. Yeah.
How do you know that you finished a page then?
Yeah, good question. Honestly, I think that comes with time and experience. Learning as an artist to be like, yes, this is finished. This feels done. I think my rule of thumb is usually if nothing else is bothering me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, as I say, you are writing or creating for yourself. You are your own audience, and if you make yourself happy, then there you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Very good. So, typically at conventions and festivals, people will come up to you and say, hey, I want to make my own comic book. What advice do you have for me? So what would you say to someone who came up to you at a show and said, I'm making my own comic book? What should I do?
Advice that I give a lot, and I teach comics on the side, is start small. Finished is always better than perfect. So do a single page comic, okay, and then do a 2-page comic, do a 4-page comic. Get a complete thought out on paper, and then submit that complete thought to anthologies. There's always anthologies popping up, calls for short comics. A lot of them have a theme. You can, create a comic for that theme. But anthologies are amazing. And they're great, and they often have deadlines. It's good to learn how to meet a deadline. So get something short and sweet and out into the world. Don't plan your 500-page epic right off the bat.
I guess that's a great calling card too, to get your work out there.
Yes, exactly. And it's a good way to get your work out there, and to meet other people who are your peers.
Right. Now you mentioned that you teach comics. I'm wondering, out of curiosity, what's the most common error that you see with comic book creators, without pinpointing anyone specifically?
Well, with my students, I would say being too ambitious. Like I said, finished is better than perfect 100% of the time. So learning how to set attainable goals for yourself is a great skill to have as a comic creator.
Very good. Very good. Now, you've talked about Resistance, and you've got a tarot card set coming out.
Yes.
I'm wondering if there's any other projects coming down the road that you're allowed to talk about without giving too much away.
Ooh, well, I think I'm currently in development, but I am working on an adaptation of Macbeth.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I'm really kind of going for it and letting myself be as nerdy as I possibly can be with I love illuminated manuscripts. I love Shakespeare. So really going for it. And we're currently shopping that around. And then we're kind of, seeing, I've just had two major projects coming out. So to be honest, it's kind of burnt out at the moment.
Oh, you want to chance the rest of it. I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah, going back to Sandman, I still reflect upon Midsummer Night's Dream, that one adaptation that he does, and I was talking to Conor McCreary, who does Kill Shakespeare, and I often refer to his work and question him. Is this something that you think that could be adapted to a curriculum in education? Because nowadays, it's changed now, of course, where comics are accepted in the curriculum. But I'm just curious to know if you perceive down the road that your Macbeth book, not to jinx anything, might be something that you could introduce into an educational curriculum as an alternative way of reading the material.
Yeah, I mean, I would absolutely love that. I think the problem sometimes with teaching Shakespeare, I don't know, you're kind of a rock and a hard place. Either you read it and you have to help people, visualize things, or you go and see a Shakespeare play and you have to get accustomed to the language and understand what's happening. But when it's in a comic form, the reader is in control of the pace. The reader gets to decide, how long they look at an image, how many times they read a speech bubble. So I think that Shakespearean comics would be an amazing way to teach Shakespeare.
Right. Exactly. So again, at conventions and festivals, it's about meeting people and networking, but it's also about purchasing books. So I'm wondering, where do you recommend people go to purchase your books?
Well, for my books, obviously you should buy them from TCAF while you're here. And then I also have a Store Envy shop that you can find through my website.
Okay. And speaking of websites, where do you recommend people go to find out more about you online, either through social media or your own online shop, I guess you could say?
Yes. Yes, you can find me. My website is, and again, everybody spells Kathryn differently. So my Kathryn is KATHRYNE Briggs, BRIGGS.com. You can find me on Twitter. I'm Withryn, so it's with RYN, like how I spell Kathryn. And I'm also on Instagram and Facebook, Kathryn Briggs Comics.
Very good. Well, Kathryn, those are all the questions I have for you, but I'm wondering if there's something I didn't ask that you'd like to get across this interview.
Oh, maybe. I think I would like to get across. So I mentioned a tarot deck, and I mentioned Shakespeare, which has lots of witches and magical things, and I mentioned Sandman. So I think I would just like to, position myself as just one of a long line of comics creators who are also into magic and have a magical practice. So when I tell my students, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't make superhero comics. I'm a comics witch." I'm part of that tradition, going back a long way. Yeah.
Thanks to Kathryn for the chat. You can discover more about Kathryn on Twitter at WITHRYN and online at KATHRYNEBRIGGS.com. And thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And please leave a good rating. Also, check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow along on Twitter at True North Comics. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel. Please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2021.